Hello and welcome to Homegrown Table Talk. On this edition, I have these gentlemen joining me today, and we're going to see where the conversation leads us and hopefully talk about some really great things that highlight our ag community. So I want to begin with some introductions. Why don't you start us off?
My name is Corey Levine. I guess my wife and I have a ranch out in Hereford, South Dakota.
Wonderful. How about you?
I'm Les Shaw, and I'm a fourth generation cattle rancher with my wife and kids at Whiteout, South Dakota, cow-calf operation.
Great.
I'm John Kirsteins. I'm from Piedmont, South Dakota. I'm a real estate agent, primarily focused on ranch real estate. My family's been ranching since 1874.
Gary Deering. I ranch at Hereford, South Dakota with my wife and three boys, and my mom and dad as well.
Glenn King, I have wife, two kids. Our ranch has been in our family for over 100 years.
Maybe we should start out there then. Let's talk about a little bit of the family history. I think there's so much that maybe you might not think is interesting, but once we dive into it, there's some really neat stories. So I keep hearing fourth generation, third generation, and throw out whoever wants to start, but what does being a fourth generation, third generation rancher, farmer, producer mean to you? I mean, why is that important to be able to carry on that legacy and also create a legacy then for your children?
I'll start. I think it's pride. It's carrying on what your mom, your dad, granddad, and grandma did. So
There's a lot of pride to it. There's a lot of history. It puts a lot of, at this moment in time, we're seeing some downward pressure in the markets. It's putting some pressure on us because we kind of have the backlash of every generation we kind of feel is looking at us right now and what we got to do better and stuff like that. It's really cool when you're amongst guys like this. I think many of us are fourth generation by now. I think the homesteads came out here in 1906, 1910 probably, so that put us about the fourth generation. But what's unfortunate in this area and a lot of areas in the United States is we're not seeing many first generation ranchers and we're not seeing the beginnings anymore. And I think that's something we got to improve on and get going.
How do we do that? I know I've heard that it's kind of difficult sometimes to start out if it's not in your family. So do you have suggestions? I mean, how does one go about that?
You have to have a lot of determination, and you also have to have a lot of financial backing as well. But it is not an easy thing to do. We all know that. But you have got to be determined. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter whether it's 10-foot tall snowbanks or 110-degree days. You have got to be willing to do that, and a lot of faith in what you're doing.
Right.
And that's a good point, the faith thing. Being this many generations in, you realize that somebody in your lineage has seen that before. Down cattle markets, bad winters, whatever. So you can get through it. You can persevere. On the other side, growing up in the ag industry, you at least have a little bit of a foothold into getting started. In most cases, your dad will buy you a cow when you're 10 years old or something like that. Being fresh off the farm and coming into agriculture is extremely tough. It's capital intensive, and if you don't have something paid for along the way, you're probably not going to make it.
Do you find individuals starting out maybe working for someone and then eventually taking over if the family didn't want to pass it on?
You see that, hopefully that becomes a reality. I think the probably average age of United States farm and ranch community is probably 58 to 60 is my guess. And so hopefully that we get some of those places that some of those guys are wanting to pass it on to maybe a nephew or even someone that's not in the family, someone that does have that passion, because the passion's got to come first or you're not going to make it through. I mean, like I said, 5-6 years ago, we saw with the markets up, you saw a lot of people coming home. The 401ks weren't as good, and they were coming back home. Now with the markets going down, we're not seeing that as much. And so hopefully we can get into a situation where there's some guys working with the younger generation.
And I don't know if I've ever met a rancher or farmer that did not have passion, which I think is a big thing to say about an industry, because I think it's something that really keeps it alive. And I can't imagine you've been able to make it through what you're talking about, those different aspects that you have to persevere through, without having that passion, because without that, what keeps you going? So I think it's really neat to see that passion. And how can we have people better understand your passion? I feel like I'm the biggest cheerleader for you guys, and I just want to help people understand just the level and depth of your character. I mean, why is that so important? Because I think sometimes there's jobs out there that you don't need a lot of character to do. You just have to show up and get your paycheck. But that's not the case in this industry.
I think series like this, what you're doing here, are very important on getting the knowledge out to the public of somewhat what we do. And you're right about the passion. If you don't love what you do in this deal, you're not gonna last, because it's not as romantic as what is portrayed on TV. There's some dirty, rotten days, more dirty, rotten days than good ones. The good ones outweigh the bad, but there are way more bad ones than good ones. But at the same time, I think there's a definite future here, because we have to feed the world no matter what happens, and you can't assembly line and feed cattle the way we do, raise cattle. So I'm hopeful. As down as you get, there's still hope. There's always the eternal hope. And back to what Johnny said, when you get down and you're thinking like you're being picked on and there's tough times, you look back at your grandparents and stuff, and you look at the 30s and 49 blizzards and all those stories you grew up hearing about. You learn a lot, and you bring that in, and you remember that. And those people, they were bone tough, and they made it through, and they didn't really dwell on it very much. So you learn a lot from that.
That's one thing too that's really neat about producers, is that you care so much about your animals. And I think sometimes ranchers, you guys are you're tough and you put on a brave face, but when it comes to it, you care so much about those animals. And the thing is I think consumers need to understand that from the beef that you are raising, because that type of quality and that upbringing ultimately makes it a better product for us as consumers. So can someone kind of speak to that, of the care for your animals and why that's so important, instead of the assembly line like you're talking about, something that seems very manufactured, and taking that kind of personal aspect out of it?
Well, you can go back generation after generation and look through South Dakota history, and we're very fortunate to live where we live. South Dakota's an ag state, and we're very supportive of the agriculture, first of all. But second of all, we've been first and foremost at cattle genetics. I mean, every ag genetics that's come forward. I mean, we were the first ones on the to get going with it. Predominantly Texas cattle, until South Dakota changed it, and in Nebraska Panhandle changed it, and this area changed it to better suit our winters, and which provided a better quality beef for the consumers. So, and this is, like you said, we're fourth generation now of that, and we've taken a lot of pride in that, and it's going generation to generation. Yeah, you go sale barn after sale barn throughout the United States, and nowhere sells any better than right here. And that it just shows that we're doing everything we can to take that pride. And it shows, because people want our cattle, people want our beef, and like you said, it's just something that we're quite proud of, and it shows, and it's going to come. And that's why Les mentioned the hope here, and that's what's hopeful. I mean, that's what makes it hopeful. I think the cattle industry is it's really going to start, in my opinion, in a lot of ways in Texas, but we made it so much better, in my opinion. I don't think we'd get too much argument. Probably would in Texas, but nonetheless, I think right here I'm not pretty safe right here. So, and I think when you see the diminish, I think it's going to end right here too. And so I think that we have a sustainable future, and that's exciting.
That is really exciting.
Well, and with our, back in the earlier days, I remember my dad talking about AI and cattle and everything. And when I first started to AI our cattle, he was like, "Oh, that's going to be so much work and everything." And I started showing him how we've progressed so much more. And now you can get a better stick on your AI and your cattle. We can improve our genetics so much more. We can improve the ribeye carcass on our cattle, and just things like that. Just try to make a better product for our agriculture community.
It's always growing. Sometimes it seems from an outsider standpoint that you can look at it and it's the same thing every time. But there's so much that goes into it and so much innovation that we're seeing every day in our farming and ranching community. What are some other types of innovation that either you yourself have found that has been helpful or that you've seen neighbors, friends?
If I can, I'm gonna go back to the,
Let's do it.
just back a little
Sure.
bit. To the consumers, we eat what we produce too. So we're taking care of our cows the same way that we consume, that we eat, in hopes that you are gonna get that same product as well. So that's why when we start talking AI and genetics and these ribeye scores and carcass numbers, we want that on, it helps our paycheck too at the end of the day, but it also puts out an excellent product to the consumer.
And I think you're seeing that in the grocery stores with the pandemic. 2 or 3 times you've heard the stories of even locally, the supermarkets being completely out of beef. Well, there are other things on the shelves, but beef is number one, and it's going fast. And I think that's due to the reputation and the quality of the herds that American ranchers have aspired to bring on and have finally, I think, arrived a little bit at that point.
Well, we're starting to see more talk of, we don't need 4 more big packers. We don't need 4 more huge facilities. We need 400 little ones. And there's more talk of that now with the pandemic going on, the grocery stores shelves being empty. There's people maybe hopefully gonna get interested in doing that work again. I mean, time will tell,
Right,
but,
definitely.
so I guess, in my opinion, that's very interesting to see.
It is.
And I hope it happens. Not just in our area. You know, so
Definitely.
time will tell.
Time will tell. So what can the consumer do to help that process? Educate themselves?
Obviously, eat beef.
Eat beef, of course.
I think that's the first and foremost. But at the same time, I mean, they can ask for, if they're wanting to source products, and that's important to them, I think they can find somewhere to do that. Obviously, we'd like some country of origin labeling. We're South Dakota stock growers, and that's something that we've been fighting for quite some time. And if that's something the consumer's wanting, and I think the majority of the consumers are saying that they do, that's something they need to be asking for. I mean, we've been beating the drum a long time, but if it comes down to more consumers talking to their representatives.
Right. So can one of you give me sort of a broad overview of what the country of origin labeling is for those that don't understand?
Essentially, country of origin labeling is we would like to see a label put on our beef that's saying it's the product of the United States if it's born, raised, and slaughtered within the United States. It currently does not have that. Other products, your shirt has that, for example, or it was made and stuff. So we would, South Dakota Stock Growers, I'm the immediate past president, and it's something we've been fighting for a long time. And like I said, it's something we feel we're proud of our product, and we want people to enjoy that product and to select that product. We feel they will pay more at the grocery stores if they see that product label on that, and they'll take pride in knowing that is made right here in the United States. So therefore, it's simply putting a label and letting the consumers know where their food's coming from.
Certainly. So let's talk a little bit about what's a day in the life. What's the day in a life of a producer? I mean, let's talk about fun things, the bad days, like you talked about.
It's very rarely boring. You get in a cycle, and then there's always something that pops up, some sort of, I don't want to say emergency, but something that needs addressed. That there may be a problem with water. There may be an illness in a bunch of cattle. There may be out of grass. There's just always things that pop up. Everything is seasonal. Once you get to winter, you pretty much settle in. Everything needs fed, watered, checked. And in the spring is the calving season. There's not a lot of sleep that time. You don't really go anywhere. You're pretty much glued to home, and you're up most nights. Because that, right then, if you don't get that calf on the ground and alive, that money is gone. There's no way to make revenue out of that after that point. So that's where you have to center your attention at that time. And then summertime, you get them out to grass and you turn to harvest of hay and feed and grains and things. To basically in South Dakota, you're either dealing with winter or you're preparing for winter.
Sure, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
you're either storing up for winter or you're making your way, you're feeding your herd through the winter, and that's kind of our cycle.
To go off what Les said, and all that is true, but you never have a day the same as your day before. And you can sit there and think okay, I'm going to do everything the way I did today. There's always one little thing that will change how your plans make. And as a rancher, you can make plans, but you also have to have the ability to adjust every day of what you're doing.
Right. And use what you have.
Yes.
I've seen that so many different times of, in this moment, I need this, so how can I take different materials of what I already have and making the most of it?
Right, so the baling wire and duct tape is true.
It is true.
Yeah. And to add to that, as a rancher, you're kind of a jack of all trades. You really are. I mean, you go from dealing with financial and books and things like that, and you're a veterinarian, and you're a nutritionist, and you're an agronomist with planning and keeping your hay ground in good production. There's all sorts, veterinary, there's everything, the whole gamut. You're mechanic, electrician. You do, and a little time, several times you're over your head on what you're doing, but you still pull it off most of the time.
But that's why you can make a phone call to anybody sitting here at this table. When you're in over your head on your electrical problem, you can call one of these guys here, and they're going to have more knowledge than what you have. Or
You're not going to call me if you're mechanical.
well, okay, I will go on record. You don't have to edit this out.
I guarantee you will not call me if you're
That Gary is exactly right.
But it's that idea where you're not alone. And
Right, you got your friends, your neighbors, your community. You can make phone calls to most anybody in that community, and you can either get the answer that you need, the help that you need over the phone, or they're going to come over and help you do it.
Well, that comes back on why we do what we do. But I will go on record and say, ranching, though not very profitable right now, you have the best neighbors in the world. And your neighbor is not necessarily just the person right next to you. Your neighbor could be 150 miles away, and then you call them and they will come running if you need help. And that is the coolest part about the ranching community.
And it ripples outside of just the ranches.
Yeah,
You'll see that all over the place.
We have friends in Sturgis and Rapid City that they live in town, and you could call them and they'll come running, and they love to come help brand or move cows.
It's a spirit of something that I think everyone could take a little bit of time and build that into themselves and their families, because I think the world needs a little bit more of that. We can't do this all on our own, so we need to come together and support each other. Well, we're kind of getting towards the end, so I'm just going to do a kind of a free-for-all. Is there anything specifically that any of you would like to put out there and say?
I think this is great, sitting around talking like this and getting some of the word out, what we do. Every operation, we've got it's 5 of us here, and 5 of us operate completely differently. I mean, it's we'd go to our places and be night and day differently, as you've seen with some of the ranchers that you've visited already. As I mentioned before, and I want to stress the fact that, pretty proud to be in South Dakota and part of this right here in South Dakota. We got a state that's supportive of agriculture. We're we're benefiting. We don't see the urban sprawl like we have in many places, although there are a lot of people moving in. But at the same time, with that said, there's a lot of wide open spaces. We got the best cattle and the best grass, and I think we're blessed to be right here.
In the best communities, because the economic impact of agriculture, specifically the ranching industry in western South Dakota, and the economic impact that has on Rapid City is phenomenal. And when the ranchers hurt, Rapid City hurts. Sturgis hurts. Sure, we've got some outliers that boost our economies a little bit, but for the most part, I think the ranching industry, if South Dakota wasn't to have it, we probably wouldn't exist.
And I'm sure there's a lot of local businesses in Rapid that would would have a testimony to that, because you will see that anywhere from medical to wanting to just do some clothes shopping, you're going to end up coming out to here and doing it all at once, or what you can.
Well, there's a reason why Fleet Farms built the gigantic store in this little town of Rapid City.
Right.
And it's because of the farming and the ranching industry in our state. And we're all proud to be part of it. I know everybody that does it is proud to be part of it. So.
And Glenn's the reason that Monument keeps building on.
Well, thank you for that.
I guess I'd just like to say I owe a debt of gratitude to my great-granddad and my granddad and my parents for all the sacrifices they made so I can do what I love for a living. And then I got to raise my family there. And I grew up with my brother there. My brother's part of the operation with his family. And now it falls on me, and my concern and my challenge is can I shore things up enough and create a business where it will be profitable and reasonable for my kids to come home. I have 2 daughters in college right now, and they both would love to come home. Whether that's possible, probably. Whether it's profitable, we'll find out. I hope to meet that challenge and pass that on. That's one of the heaviest weights on me right now. Yeah, I'm going through tough times, most of us are, but I think about my kids a lot, and if they will have the same opportunity that I had, and I have to try to provide that for them.
Certainly. Well, I appreciate all of you being here, and I appreciate each of you just in general for everything that you do, for being genuine in your speaking, and I wish you the best, and I hope that we can continue to get people to be interested and just start asking questions and rally behind you and lift you up so that your daughters can come back and there is that setup for them.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. This is a good deal.
Definitely. Thank you.